Hey guys, what's good? Welcome back to JDB Selects. Coming at you today with my round one, or I guess second half of round one tips and predictions. Obviously following the two games over in Vegas on Sunday, and my word, they were unreal. I had massive FOMO all Sunday watching those two games. I mean, definitely going to have to make the trip over there if the Warriors are named to play in Vegas next year. I thought the scenes were incredible. 40,000 people for the first ever year is just a testament to how successful it was. And obviously all four teams put on a great game, but that game against the Bunnies and Manly was extraordinary. Now, if you don't know by now, we do run a subscribers tipping comp. All the details to join are in the video description, so jump down below now if you're keen. We do have prizes this year, so first place you'll be getting 2 tickets to the grand final. Second place you'll be getting a 2025 NRL jersey of your choice. And third place you get a $50 NRL shop voucher. There are a couple of things to note with the tipping comp though. You do need to register with a correct email address. The email address you register on iTipFooty must be yours, because that is how I will contact you if you are successful and place in the top 3. And you also must be subscribed to me on YouTube, be an active member of the community, and also follow me on both Facebook and Instagram. And looking over last week's results, we managed to tip 1 out of 2 games, the 2 Vegas games. Obviously tipped the Sea Eagles. I thought they looked really, really good. That combination of DCE, Brooks, and Turbo is very, very scary. It could easily be a top 3 spine in the NRL. They played phenomenally for the first game of the season, and I'm really excited to see what Manly can pull off later in the season. And as for the Broncos, they seemed to think it would be too easy against the Roosters and got a taste of their own medicine. They seemed like they were rushing, trying to go around the outside too soon, and not playing good, honest, hard football through the middle. So I have no doubt, though, that the Broncos will bounce back and will still be one of the teams to beat this year. Alright, cool. Enough of me rambling on. Let's get stuck into my tips and predictions for round 1 of the 2024 NRL season. Starting first on Thursday night, we have the Newcastle Knights hosting the Canberra Raiders at McDonald Jones Stadium. Starting first with the Newcastle Knights, they were the feel-good story of 2023 alongside the Warriors, winning a record 11 games straight to make their way into the top 8 and go deep into the finals. Kalen Ponga was also awarded Daily M Player of the Year for his pivotal role in that massive run towards the top 8. It was so good to watch. Obviously, as a Warriors fan, I am a little bit dark that SJ didn't take out that medal, but full credit to KP. He was absolutely unbelievable for the Knights and a real standout in that team. The big challenge now for the Knights is obviously to maintain that form, maintain that ladder position, and prove that it wasn't just a once-off, and that they can be a genuine top 8 side for a long period of time. And as for the Canberra Raiders, they also made their way into the top 8, only to be knocked out in what was an epic final showdown against the Newcastle Knights. The Raiders were slow and steady all year. I think they were the only side in the top 8 that hadn't beat a side by more than 12 points. So if you're tipping the Raiders again this season, make sure you take them 1 to 12 week in and week out. They'll never let you down. Obviously, making the top 8 is an achievement, but bowing out in week 1 is very, very disappointing, I'm sure, for Ricky Stewart and his men. And they'll be hoping that they can go a little bit further in 2024. Looking at the live odds right now, the Knights are $1.42, with the Raiders coming back at $2.90. The points line for this one is 7.5, and the over and under is 41.5. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, Newcastle have won 6 of the last 8 games, including 3 straight. The Knights have also won 3 of their past 4 games against the Raiders in Newcastle. Alright, and because this is round 1, and as we did last week, we will look at the teams list for this week and this week only. Starting first with the Knights, Phoenix Crosland, he retains the hooker spot after a very successful back part of the 2023 campaign, with Jaden Brayley still on the sidelines with a hamstring issue. Obviously, KP is still at number 1. Their new recruit, Kai Pearce-Paul, is named on the bench, with Adam O'Brien opting to go for Dylan Lucas in the back row. The Knights have also signed Jack Cogger, but have chosen to go with Jackson Hastings and Tyson Gamble in the halves. And as for the Raiders, Ricky Stewart has chosen Ethan Strange to partner Jamal Fogarty in the halves. Seb Chris is out with suspension. Jordan Rapana is fullback, which moves Xavier Savage to the wing. Morgan Smithies will make his NRL debut too. He'll be starting at lock. Danny Levi also returns to the fold after missing a majority of the 2023 season at hooker. So what that does do is it pushes Tom Starling to the bench, and there's no room in the side for Zach Wolford. Alright, and as for a tip for this one, I am going to take the Knights here by 1 to 12 points. Obviously, being the first game of the season, we don't know how both sides will come out. I do think the Knights have far more strike than the Raiders, But in saying that, they obviously went toe-to-toe in that finals rematch, and it was only decided by, I believe, 2 points. So I am going to take the Knights just by 1-12. But again, I would not be surprised if in front of their sold-out home fans, the Knights and KP put on an absolute clinic and run away with it late. Alright, moving now to the first of 2 Friday fixtures, starting first with the NZ Warriors hosting the Cronulla Sharks over here at Go Media Stadium, Auckland, Aotearoa. Starting first with the Warriors, just like I touched on with the Knights, the Warriors were the feel-good story of the 2023 season, hosting their first home finals game in over a decade, falling just short in the preliminary final to the Brisbane Broncos. It was a really special season to be a part of, especially as a Warriors fan. Obviously the Up the Waz movement was great. New head coach Andrew Webster headed out the park from day dot. I mean, really impressive. Very similar story to the Knights too, though. They need to make sure that it wasn't just a one-off, a one-hit wonder. They need to retain that form, retain that ladder position, and prove to not only us as fans, but to themselves that they do belong in that upper echelon of teams. And as for the Sharks, they did also make the top 8 last year, finishing in 6th position. But the one thing the Sharks don't really enjoy doing is beating top 8 sides or winning finals games. So that is certainly something they'll need to fix up if they are going to challenge for a premiership in 2024. And there's been very minimal changes to the Sharks lineup in the off-season. Pretty much the same 1-13 as they would have been last year. They did obviously let go of Connor Tracy to the Dogs. They're obviously gaining Adam Fanua-Blake, but that will be from next year onwards. So really no change to Cronulla's lineup this year. Alright, looking at the live odds for this, the Warriors are favourites at $1.54, with the Sharks coming back at $2.50. The points line is 4.5 points, and the over and under is 39.5. I tell you what, I'll be snapping up that over 39.5 points. I do think the Warriors have plenty of points in them, as did the Sharks. So to me, I think that over 39.5 is a little bit light. And looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Warriors bested the Sharks both times they met in 2023, which obviously included that remarkable 20-point comeback. However, the Sharks, they do have a very good record in Auckland. They've won 5 of their last 7 trips across the Tasman. And just looking at the teams list quickly, Chance Nickel-Klokstad is out of action this week. That means Tane Tuapiki will start at fullback. That'll be his 6th NRL appearance, with new recruit RTS, there we go. Old recruit / new recruit Roger Tuivasa-Sheck moving into the centres. Luke Metcalf has been given the go-ahead at 5'8", ahead of the likes of Tamari Martin and Chanel Harris-Tavita, and there is no room in the starting site for fan favourite Jazz Tavanga. Do I even need to say who I'm tipping, guys? Come on, Warriors 1-12. Tempted to take Warriors 13+, but out of respect for the Sharks and their decent record over this way, I am going to take the Warriors 1-12. I do think the Waz are just as good, if not better than they were last year. And I really do hope that they can prove it to us as fans and to themselves. So, Waz, 1-12. And the final game on Friday should be an absolute cracker. We have the Melbourne Storm taking on the 3-time defending Premier Penrith Panthers at Amy Park in Melbourne. Starting first with the Storm, despite what many, including myself, thought was an average year, the Storm still managed to finish in the top 4, which is truly remarkable and really a testament to Bellamy's coaching. Considering they lost the likes of Felice Kaufusi, the Bromwich brothers, etc., they still were able to perform at that same level they've basically performed at since they entered the comp. And as for the Panthers, well, they obviously did the unthinkable, the thing that no one said could be done again. They did the three-peat last year, coming back in the grand final to beat the Brisbane Broncos. I mean, what can you say? They were easily the best defensive side, and in the end, that's what won them the grand final. They've got star power left and right. Obviously, the combination of Cleary and Luai, this is their final year, so they'll obviously want to put a stamp on their final season together. They have lost Stephen Crichton, who is a big loss for them. I know most people would say a centre isn't that important to a side, but I think Stephen Crichton really is important to that Panthers side. He's a big game player. He seems to make something happen out of nothing, and they'll certainly miss him this year. He's obviously replaced by Taylor May and Isaac Tungo. But again, looking at their side on paper, which we'll touch on shortly, it's hard to see them not being hot favourites to at least make another appearance in the grand final. Alright, looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Storm are currently underdogs at $2.25, with the Panthers coming back at $1.65. The line for this one is 3.5, and the over and under is 35.5 points. The Panthers have won 6 of the last 8 meetings between the two sides. That includes 3 straight. However, Melbourne hasn't historically been a happy hunting ground for the Panthers, only getting the Chockies there twice in their last 12 games. There's also a lot at stake for the Storm, as they'll be fighting to keep Craig Bellamy's near 20-year round 1 unbeaten streak intact, but will need to do it against the obviously formidable 3-time defending premiers. And quickly just going over the teams list for this one, Cam Murray has been named to play despite battling a groin injury in recent weeks. Joe Chan has been elevated to a starting back row spot with Trent Liero moving to lock and new recruit Sean Bloor from the Tigers listed as 18th man. And as for the Panthers, Jerome Luai is named to play after missing the World Club Challenge a few weeks back. Sunia Taruva is also set to line up after being injured in that game as well. Taylor May also gets first crack at filling the gap left by Stephen Crichton. Luke Summerton is also named at halfback ahead of the likes of Sonny Luke with Mitch Kenny out. And Tyrone Peachey is also named on the bench and will likely fill in that dummy half role. Ooh, here we go then. Can the Panthers snap Bellyache's near 20-year record? I'm going to say yes. Now, am I confident? No. But for the past few years, I have tipped against Melbourne in round 1, and I've obviously lost. So if I were to change this year and they were to finally lose in round 1, I would be beside myself for going against the grain. So I am going to take the Panthers here 1-12. I do think it'll be a cracking game, but I do think the Panthers can break Bellamy's 20-year record. Alright, moving now to the first of just 2 Saturday games this week. We have the Parramatta Eels taking on the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs at CommBank Stadium in Sydney. Starting first with the Eels, it was a very, very disappointing season for Parramatta, falling outside the 8 and coming in at 10th position. They obviously had to deal with a few key injuries and suspensions throughout the year, to the likes of Regan Campbell-Gillard, Dylan Brown, Polo, etc., etc. But they certainly lacked a bit of consistency, is probably the word. Consistency in their lineups, consistency in their processes. And I know every team has to deal with injuries and suspensions, but it certainly did seem to hit Parramatta hard last year. As for the Bulldogs, well, they were much of the same last year under new coach Cameron Ciraldo, missing out on the top 8 and coming in at 15th. They have obviously continued their signing blitz, bringing in the likes of Stephen Crichton, Jamin Salmon, Blake Taff, Bronson Sherry also making his return this season for the Dogs. They've certainly recruited. It'll be interesting to see how that translates to on-field results. I'm not quite sure that they have named their best or their strongest side, personally, in my opinion, but we'll touch on that shortly. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Eels are currently favourites at $1.44, with the Doggies coming back at $2.80. The line for this one is 6.5 points, and the over and under being 39.5 points. The Eels have won 7 of the past 8 games against the Dogs. That does include 3 straight. The Bulldogs have also only beaten Parramatta once at CommBank, with their lone win at the stadium coming back in 2019, with the Eels winning 4 straight since then. Alright, and a quick look at the teams list. Mike Acevo is the notable omission for the Eels. He is serving a 3-game ban. That means Bailey Simonson shifts to the wing, and Morgan Harper will partner Will Penasini in the centres. Joey Lussick is given the reins at starting hooker for round 1, with Brendan Hands named on the bench. So overall, fairly strong side for Parramatta. And as for the Bulldogs, Stephen Crichton lines up in the centres alongside Jacob Perez, which means Bronson Cherry misses out, and Blake Taff is the starting fullback. Former Panther Jamin Salmon is given the first shot at lock, with my man Joshy Curran coming on the bench alongside Kurt Mann, Curtis Morin and Sam Hughes. And the other thing worth noting too is Drew Hutchinson is named in the halves alongside Matt Burton, with Toby Sexton listed amongst the reserves. I touched on it briefly before, but I don't think the Bulldogs have named their best or at least their strongest side in my opinion, which is why I am going to take the Eels here by 1-12 points. I do think the Bulldogs can improve this year, but I do think it will take some time to find their best 17, and personally, from what I believe or what I think, I don't think they've done that in round 1, whereas the Eels do have a significantly strong side that obviously played in the grand final not too long ago, so I am going to take the Eels here 1-12. Alright, and the final game on Saturday is the Gold Coast Titans taking on the St. George Illawarra Dragons, 2 new head coaches going head-to-head at Cbus Super Stadium on the Gold Coast. Very, very disappointing years for both of these sides, finishing 14th and 16th respectively. I don't really need to go through it. I mean, not too many shining lights for both sides. Obviously, there's some great players in each side, but really struggled to string results together. Obviously, the inclusion of Foran has been great for the Titans, and Ben Hunt obviously continues to be the shining light for the St. George Illawarra Dragons. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Titans are favourite at $1.50, with the Dragons coming back at $2.60. The points line is 5.5 points, and the over and under is 42.5 points. The Titans also have a slight edge over the Dragons in recent years, winning 4 of their last 6 meetings. They've also won 3 of the past 4 games against St. George on the Gold Coast. And again, having a quick look at the teams list for this one, Keanu Kenny takes over the number 1 jersey, with Jaden Campbell likely to miss at least the first month of the season with a knee injury. David Fafita is also sidelined with a pectoral injury. That sees Bo Fermor move to the left edge, while Khalees Haas claims the other second row spot, with former Bronco Keenan Palacia in at lock. The other noticeable change for the Titans is that AJ Brimson is now in the centres, and is good to go after failing an HIA in week 2 of the preseason challenge. And as for the Dragons, Shane Flanagan has stuck with Tyrell Sloan at fullback. That does move Zach Lomax on the wing for the season opener. The hooker Jacob Little and prop Blake Laurier also good to go after suffering a hamstring and rib injury respectively. Also a very new look bench for the Dragons that includes NRL debutant Viliami Fafita, as well as former Bulldog Raymond Faitala Mariner and Michael Molo. This is another tricky game to tip this week in my opinion. Both sides obviously need to show some improvement on last year. They also will be the first game with each club under new head coach Des Hasler and Shane Flanagan respectively. But I am going to take the Dragons for an upset here. I'm going to take the Dragons 1-12. I did like what I saw from the Dragons in the preseason trials, albeit against the Tigers. I also think that the Titans have gone through quite a few positional changes. We saw the effects of some of those in the 2 Vegas games, that certain defensive positions didn't hold up as well, with players still learning defensive reads and things like that. So I do think the Dragons are live underdogs here, so I am going to take them 1-12. Alright, and the final game of round 1 is on Sunday, and it should be an absolute cracker too. We have the Redcliffe, or the Dolphins, taking on the North Queensland Cowboys at Suncorp Stadium in Brisbane. Starting first with the Finns, it's pretty hard to say if their first season in the NRL was a success. Personally, I would say yes it was. I know they obviously started really hot and then fell apart later in the season through injuries and suspensions, but that's only to be expected of a new side with very little depth. They've done some really good recruitment in the off-season, picking up the likes of Herbie Farnworth and Thomas Flegler from the Broncos, which should be 2 massive inclusions to their 2024 season. And obviously, currently their last year under head coach Wayne Bennett, I'm sure they'll want to send Wayne out with a berth in the top 8. And as for the Cowboys, a disappointing year for them. They were very strong in 2022 and unfortunately found themselves outside the 8 in 2023. They have no shortage of strike players, the likes of Drinkwater, Taumalolo, Dearden, Cotter, Nanai, Lukey. They've got some seriously star players. So for them to miss the 8, it was certainly concerning last year. But I do have a feeling that they may be able to turn that around this year. It really does depend on how their halves combination goes with Dearden and Townsend. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Finns are currently underdogs at $2.60, with the Cowboys coming back as $1.50 favourites. The points line for this one is currently set at 5.5 points, and the over and under is 42.5. It's all square at 1 apiece in one of the latest Queensland derbies. Obviously, the Dolphins winning one and the Cowboys winning the other of their 2 meetings. However, interestingly enough, the away team has won on both occasions, with neither side yet to win in front of their home fans. The Cowboys, they've also enjoyed playing at Suncorp recently, coming up victorious in 4 of their last 5 games there. Alright, and just quickly going over the teams list for this one as well. The big loss for the Dolphins is obviously Tom Gilbert, as he ruptured his ACL in the trial game against the Warriors, which is just horrible. I feel so bad for Tom. He missed a good chunk of last year, and now he looks set to miss a good chunk of this year as well. So really disappointing there, but that does mean that Ray Stone comes back in at lock and pushes Kenny Bromwich to the bench. Sean O'Sullivan also failed an HIA in that game against the Warriors, but it's good to go alongside Cody Nikorima in the halves this week. Herbie Farnworth and Tom Flegler, who we just touched on, are named in the starting side. And as for the Cowboys, interestingly enough, Kyle Felt is back in that wing position, pushing Sammy Valame to the reserves. Zach Labor will play his 5th NRL game as he comes to take over at centre from the departing Peta Hiku. Big Jason Taumalolo comes in at starting prop with the season-ending injury to Cohen Hess, and Sam McIntyre will join the bench, and a really strong back row combination of Nanai and Lukey. Alright, another really tough game to tip in my opinion. I think it'll be close, but I am going to take the Cowboys here 1-12. I think the stats obviously back that up, and the Cowboys do have the superior side. If they can perform to the best of their ability, no doubt will be a close game, but I do like the Cowboys here 1-12. Bang, and just like that, we are done for another week. In summary, I am taking the Knights, Warriors, Panthers, Eels, Dragons, and Cowboys all by 1-12 points. Thank you as always for watching. If you are still here and you aren't subscribed, what are you doing? Hit that button, leave a like on the video, drop your tips and predictions in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.